Consumerism is turning our generation of young people into refined paupers. We struggle to afford something like an iPad, only for it to go from a productivity tool to an overpriced media player. We spend a lot of money on a guitar, fail to learn how to play it, and end up selling it. We buy a Polaroid camera and discover the film is too expensive, so we let it sit unused. The Kindle turns into a lid for our instant noodles, and the treadmill ends up abandoned in a corner. If any of this sounds familiar, feel free to share your own stories in the comments. When it comes to resisting consumerism, society's usual advice is just to be rational, learn to budget, don't overspend on credit, all that sort of thing. But after really thinking about the ideas in the book, Made to Break, Technology and Obsolescence in America, combined with behavioral psychology's feedback loop theory, I've realized that relying solely on so-called rational consumption and money management only fights the symptoms without addressing the root cause. Consistently suppressing our urge to buy might even backfire, leading to explosive, revenge-style shopping sprees later on. In this video, I'll be using Made to Break as a reference, along with insights from behavioral psychology, to explore how we can break free from the urge to buy. We'll talk about how to avoid losing confidence and satisfaction when you cut back on spending, how to stop consumerism from hijacking the reward circuits in your brain, and I'll also share my own notes and tips along the way. Don't forget to follow and show some love if this resonates with you. Before we dive in, think about how much influence brands have on you when you're caught up in a shopping frenzy. While reading, I kept asking myself why brands only emerged after the Industrial Revolution. After all, back in the agricultural era, there were already bustling markets and cities, so why no Nike shoes, Hermes leather, or Nestle coffee back then? Some might say it's because there was no intellectual property protection at the time, so branding would have been pointless. But that's not the core issue. The real reason is simple. Back then, there was no need for brands. In an agricultural society, when people needed something, they just buy it from a craftsman in the same village or town. Everything stayed pretty local. When you needed something, you bought by reputation. You knew who sold fresh eggs and who made shoddy shoes. Everyone knew each other, so you didn't need a brand as a guarantee of quality. But then, the Industrial Revolution changed everything. Goods were mass-produced and shipped over long distances, sold in sealed packaging. No one knew who made the product, or whether it was any good. Packaging and transportation were still pretty rudimentary, and industrial goods often had issues, which only deepened everyone's distrust. In business, having no reputation is basically a death sentence, so the idea of the brand was created and promoted. Its main function was to signal to consumers that a given product was reliable. All you had to do was trust the brand, and you wouldn't get scammed. Laws soon caught up to protect intellectual property, and trust seemed restored. But as industry advanced further, another problem emerged. Mass-produced goods became too similar in quality, appearance, and user experience. Two entrepreneurs might both make loafers, but if their products were practically identical, they'd be forced into price wars and end up making no money. To solve this problem, companies went beyond just quality and productivity and lit the fuse of modern consumerism by adding something extra: values. Brands began conveying different values and offering consumers distinct identities. This wasn't just a one-sided move. As brands started offering values, society welcomed a new group hungry to find and embrace these values: the emerging middle class. In future videos, I'll explore the history and struggles of the middle class in different countries, so feel free to subscribe if you're interested. That's it for now. Stay tuned as we dig deeper into how to outsmart consumerism and reclaim control over our desires. Even though the quality and user experience of products might not differ significantly, branding assigns symbolic value that breaks the link between price and actual value. Many of you might already know that a lot of luxury brands and regular brands use the same factories. Yet, only the big-name brands can take a pair of shoes that cost 70 yuans to make and sell them for 700 yuans. It's precisely because of these factors that we develop a brand filter to varying degrees. Are there more practical and affordable ways to clear this filter and fight the endless cycle of buy? Speaking of which, some of you have asked what it's like being a full-time content creator. My answer? It's like moving your home into your office. You wake up, and you're already at work. Recently, with all the buzz about Black Myth, Wukong, I thought about adding some entertainment to my routine. I decided to get a PS5 to unwind. Unfortunately, the game's popularity caused a PS5 shortage across all platforms. Left with no other option, I rented one from a local gaming store. After 3 days, I was completely over it. Despite having so many games to choose from, I realized that after a long day of work, watching a movie, reading a novel, or listening to a podcast suits me much better. I just didn't have the energy to deal with Golden Cicada Master. I bought into the PS5 hype thinking it would bring me relaxation, but it turned out to be ill-suited to my lifestyle. This taught me a valuable lesson. The best way to break the allure of something is to actually own it. Modern society offers us an endless array of products, but very few of them are genuinely useful to us. Most of the time, we're captivated by the halo surrounding brands, convinced that owning a particular item will make us happy. But this is just a mirage created by consumerism and branding, designed to keep us perpetually unsatisfied and chasing after more. So, before making any major purchase, why not test the waters first? For non-essential, high-cost items, try renting or borrowing them from friends. If you find during actual use that it truly adds value to your life, then consider buying it. Now, some of you might raise the point that consumption isn't just about personal satisfaction, also has a social element. It seems we need external purchases to project our personal image, gain confidence, earn recognition, or even seize opportunities. So how do we deal with the financial burden that comes with this type of consumption? Let's explore that next. While I was studying, I always wondered why almost all ancient love stories in literature are tragedies. Why did all attempts at elopement seem to fail? Before the 20th century, the world was predominantly agricultural. People depended heavily on their community, and everything from daily needs to marriage had to align with collective norms. Being different often meant exclusion or even death, which is why elopement was discouraged. However, as industrial civilization progressed and urbanization accelerated, more and more people moved to cities. They no longer relied on their families or communities, but could survive independently by selling their labor. In the book, The Consumer Society, the author describes how people began to distance themselves spiritually from their communities and entered a world rich with symbolic consumer goods. People's thoughts and life principles changed as capitalism took root. The focus shifted from stringent, ascetic education to valuing personal freedom and self-expression. An independent self was cultivated, at least. That's what people thought. It seemed like we had become free, breaking away from the constraints of feudal morality and pursuing individuality. What we didn't realize, however, was that this shift in mindset brought severe consequences. In classical literature, a character was often loved for their abilities, qualities, and sense of responsibility. But now, in an era dominated by consumerism, a person lacking ability and quality can still gain wide attention and adoration if they display unique personal charm and charisma. Let's not broadcast this on public screens, but it means people have started to show who they are through consumption, a phenomenon sociologist David Reisman called other-directedness. The biggest problem with this orientation is that it fundamentally changes our personal development philosophy. We no longer focus on enhancing our capabilities and qualities, but shift to managing impressions, crafting our identities through what we consume. Whether it's working on a MacBook at Starbucks, a young professional driving a Tesla, sporting the latest iPhone Pro Max, or a successful businessman decked out in designer suits, expensive watches, or as a rapper with trendy sunglasses and gold chains, these stereotyped images have become a societal consensus. To gain others' approval, we focus on our attire and carefully select our daily consumer goods to project personal taste. We hope to send a signal to others: look how impressive I am. This is meant to inspire admiration, but is it really that simple? Imagine a luxury car slowly driving down the street, turning heads, including yours. You might think, wow, what a great car. If only I could be as rich as that person. Ironically, nobody cares about the driver. This is the luxury car paradox that Morgan Housel talks about in his book on the psychology of money. We think our consumption and outward appearance will earn us respect and admiration, but people usually skip admiring us. They don't care who we are, they only fantasize about owning the same things. So, if you're hoping that external consumption will win you admiration, you might be disappointed. I've been swept up in consumerist trends myself, thinking that I needed to buy hardcover books because they looked impressive and cool, but they're expensive and impractical, and I fell right into the merchant's trap. As social creatures, we often define our identities through consumption. But what if we stopped? If we no longer splurged on lavish items just to show off on social media, would we lose our visibility and miss out on opportunities? I recall a friend sharing his study abroad experiences where he actively participated in social gatherings with potential big shots, known as future moguls. But he noticed that their conversations often revolved around trivial topics like the best brand of coffee machines or where to camp with the least wind, leaving him puzzled if these really were the concerns of true leaders. This brought to mind the term refined mediocrity, mentioned by the founder of Ribbon Farm in his blog about the subtleties of being ordinary. People who indulge in such mediocrity are acutely aware of their consumer behavior. They know they aren't truly indulging in luxury, even though it appears they are constantly progressing. In reality, everyone in these circles understands that this isn't a reliable measure of striving upwards. In other words, refined mediocrity is like wearing a coat that looks like the ideal life, which they can just afford, but doesn't actually enhance their quality of life. It's about managing impressions, not improving realities. In such circles, people tend to showcase their lifestyle, capabilities, and social status through daily consumption, fashionable clothing, and social media updates. They receive praise like, "You're amazing," or "You're doing great." But deep down, everyone knows these aren't genuine strides in personal development. It's all about appearances, a glamorous social media facade, but an unfinished, hollow life beneath. When I first started university, I too was caught in the whirlpool of consumerism, always caught up in paying off my shopping debts. Eventually, I realized the problem lay with my social circle. In a circle that values aesthetic poverty, people spend considerable time crafting their social media image and participating in pointless social activities, which often leads to a lack of financial resources, time, and energy for personal growth. This results in stagnant or decreasing income, rising debt, and worsening financial conditions. As financial stress mounts, the temptation to consume as a means of proving one's worth only intensifies, creating a vicious cycle that turns us into elegantly impoverished individuals with a shiny exterior but strained means. Thus, I decisively cut ties with that old circle and began connecting with people genuinely interested in self-improvement. Over time, I found that truly impressive individuals don't care about your consumption habits. Discussions and thoughts focus on ambitions and real actions, not on stimulating consumer desires. Gradually, my material desires minimized, focusing almost all my attention on my personal goals. In a circle oriented towards self-investment, everyone's trajectory trends upwards, unlike in image-managed groups, where everyone's progress declines. If you find yourself in an environment overly stimulating your desire to consume without providing real progress, switching circles is a great option. You shouldn't worry about losing friends or opportunities because being on the Titanic, even in first class, the end result remains the same. Remember, genuine advancement and recognition come from real achievements, not from what you appear to own. Let's break this down in a way that really speaks to us. We've been talking about impression management, right? This idea that we can shape our identities through what we buy. But here's the twist: the luxury car paradox shows us that despite our efforts, consumption alone won't earn genuine admiration or respect. And that's just the start. In environments where everyone is focused on appearing refined, but ordinary, people's development tends to stagnate. But when we're in an environment that values skills, quality, and responsibility, that's when we truly become admirable. But there's an even darker side to consumerism. It twists our desires, leading us to make decisions that don't really serve us well. Here's a story that might surprise you. A friend of mine, a guitar teacher, noticed something interesting. Every September, there's a spike in second-hand guitar sales. Why September? Because every summer, loads of students decide on a whim that they're going to learn guitar, splurge on expensive models, and then by September, when the excitement wears off and reality sets in, they give up and sell their hardly used guitars. This impulse buying isn't limited to guitars. Think about it. We buy cameras, thinking we'll become photographers, gym memberships, promising ourselves we'll get fit, or even fancy laptops to write that novel. But often, these purchases end up unused, and our skills don't really improve. Consumerism, with its seductive allure, tricks us into believing these things are stepping stones to our dreams. Behavioral psychology explains this through what's called a feedback loop, consisting of cues, cravings, responses, and rewards. Normally, if you wanted to learn guitar after being inspired by someone like Justin Bieber, you'd start exploring, take lessons, practice chords, and feel rewarded when you finally play a tune. But consumerism hijacks this process. Instead of mastering the guitar, the reward becomes owning the guitar. And once that box arrives at your doorstep, the initial thrill fades, leaving you no closer to your music goals. So, you see, consumerism isn't just about buying, it's about diminishing the gap between desire and fulfillment, making everything instantly accessible. This reduces our patience and resilience in achieving real goals. I've seen this firsthand in music production circles, where people own expensive gear but can barely make decent music. It's a classic case of having all the tools but none of the talent. To combat this, we need to shift away from a consumption-driven reward system to one that truly values personal growth and achievement. It's not about the gear you own, but what you do with it. Let's focus on cultivating genuine skills and experiences, not just the appearance of them. When we think about using something to help us progress, we need to limit the satisfaction that comes merely from purchasing it. For instance, when I first wanted to learn music production, I wasn't sure if I could master it. So, I started with just the basic equipment. Only after I improved my skills and started earning some money by helping others arrange music did I invest in better equipment. This way, upgrading became a reward that matched my actual skills, a positive incentive, and a beneficial upgrade process. At the same time, we can learn to disrupt the craving phase in the reward cycle to decrease the satisfaction derived from consuming. A great way to do this is to calculate how many hours of work it would take to afford an item. For example, if a product costs thousands, that might be half a month's or even a month's salary for you. Realizing this can make us think twice about whether we truly need it, or decide to wait until our abilities and earnings genuinely justify the purchase. Today, we've tackled 3 aspects of consumerism. First, the impact of brand allure on our spending. Second, the effect of impression management. And third, how consumption hijacks our reward circuits. We've looked at these issues from a macro perspective and offered personal strategies to combat them. You'll see that all 3 approaches encourage us to reduce consumption, which drains our finances, time, and energy, allowing us to focus on personal growth and development. Focusing on development and boosting our productivity provides the financial basis needed to enjoy more material rewards. This is true for countries and individuals alike. I'm glad you've stayed with me this far. I'm Pinkwood, a newbie YouTuber passionate about sharing knowledge. See you in the next video.